Hello, my name is Dante Renee, and welcome to the 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more. Like tonight's film, 1988's Loose Times at Ridley High. This is Loose Times at Ridley High, 1988, put out by VCX Video. And it says where the teachers make the grades and the students make the teachers. 1988's This is Loose Times at Ridley High. And here is the back, and it's actually, well, I can't show too much too up close, but this is put out by VCX right here. And actually, this is an official release here, but the actual DVD seems to be a DVD-R. I mean, it has artwork on the top of it and everything else, but this is put out by VCX VCX specializes in adult entertainment and has also released the infamous Debbie Does Dallas. So this is Loose Times at Ridley High, obviously a play off of Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and this is 1988. And a great cover there. This is one of the few covers where the two people on the cover are actually in the movie. So let's get into Loose Times at Ridley High. This is essentially about a 70 to 75 minute adult film from part of the golden age of adult films from the 70s and 80s, and this is from 1988. Now, this is a film that follows the exploits of senior year high school girls about to graduate and their constant process and adventures and sexual adventures with trying to pass their tests. Now, there are a variety of different teachers throughout the school that they know where they can get the proper test scores and answers from, as well the relationships between the girls themselves. And it also seems like this is a private school where they actually sleep over at the school, and their connections to the specific teachers in the school, knowing what those teachers like, and even the janitor having some leads in being able to pass their exams. So essentially what we have here is an adult film dealing with schoolgirls, and they're kind of what you would know as the typical plot point, which would be making the grade and passing their tests without having to study, but having the right sexual connections to do so. Now, this is a plot line that you could see in sexploitation in general and in teen sex comedies as well. And in this particular film, we are looking at it from an X-rated standpoint. So let's get into Loose Times at Ridley High from VCX Video, and I'm gonna blow you away here, no pun intended, with talking about this film. And you're probably going to hear about this film in a way that you have not heard about an X-rated film before, or this film in particular, if you've heard of it before. This is a really, really great adult film that really represents and really feels like the 80s, and I was actually quite shocked. I didn't realize that it was from the late 80s. I would not have known that at all. So let's get into this film right here. First and foremost, we're going to talk about the music. The music in this film is unbelievably spectacular. We're talking the cream of the crop of low budget 80s synthesized score. There is a rhythm, a beat, but there's also a surreal mystery about the score as well. And the instrument that they're playing it on, the particular synthesizer that they're playing the score on, has a very unique sound to it. Now, I wish I was more skilled in knowing which keyboard or which synthesizer was being used when I could hear it, but they're definitely using one kind in this film, and there are tons of different pieces of music, predominantly for each sex scene in the film. And the pieces of music just have this odd feel about them, and a very spatial, atmospheric feel to them as well. There's also the element, as I said, of rhythm and groove, which you would know to be the standard porn music, but also elements of dreamy, fantasy, surreal, bizarre, mysterious vibes in the music at times when you would not expect it. Also in the sound design, there's a section of reverb when you would not expect it from the characters' moans and voices. We also seem to have, mysteriously enough, maybe some dubbing just in some moaning at times. And this is not a film that seems to be dubbed at all. It's an American film from the late 80s, but it seems to have some moans dubbed in there as well, which is very interesting. Now, when we look at the cinematography and the style for this film, this is where we talk about the differences between the adult films from the 70s and the 80s and the ones of today. This is part of the golden age, and this is a film that represents style. So as soon as the film starts off, you're like, what the hell am I watching? Because you are in a completely white-scape environment where a character seems to be talking to you. And it seems to, there seems to be something very surreal and mysterious going on. What you don't realize is that this film will use the style and its own way of representing fantasy within here. And that can be represented through a completely white-walled room, taking on a surreal atmosphere. We also have some very crazy type, I say like Willy Wonka when the little kid goes into the television, like those types of effects in this film as well. I'm not even joking around. It almost looks like it's animated, but it's not. And it's representing, once again, fantasies, desires, fears, worries of different characters in the film, where they could look at a piece of paper and their mini self is talking to them from the piece of paper, or in the case of a teacher's fantasy. Now, in this particular film, we are definitely representing teachers' fantasies about the students. And so that's done in a creative way as well, where typically inside of your mind you're undressing somebody. Well, in this film you get to see the mind, and you also get to see not only the mind's eye, but you get to see the reality as well, and where the mind leads in reality. We also have this really wild tracking shot at the end of this movie, going through hallways. It almost reminds me a bit at the end of the original Black Christmas. I know at this point you're saying, what the hell are you talking about? But no joke, this really wild tracking shot at the end of the movie. Now, we have some really uniquely crazy things in this film that just add to the wild sexual atmosphere, the wild naughty atmosphere. And one of those things is, have you ever seen somebody have have you ever seen somebody have the written test answers on their breasts? Yes, on their breasts. The answers on their breasts, okay? How about a sex scene involving a clarinet, I believe, but actually playing the clarinet, actually playing it while having sex. There is a great scene just involving double entendres with musical instruments. And yes, you've heard double entendres before. If you watch the film Gas Pump Girls, they're constantly utilizing, kind of the pumping of gas, or the gas station itself, to capitalize on those double entendres. But in this particular film, what we have is this amazing music scene that is very just one big old double entendre, but done in a very, very unique way, a very, very stylistic and interesting way, where we also have another tracking shot in that particular scene as things are becoming unveiled. Now, in terms of the dialogue of the film, it's just perfect low budget 80s dialogue for any low budget horror film or low budget sexploitation film or X-rated film in this particular case. And we have very sexually attractive girls in this film. For the ladies, there are some guys in here that could be attractive. They're younger guys, and the sex scenes are wild and actually not extremely long, which is interesting, but they're wild. We have two girls and one guy. We typically have just a guy and a girl. We have masturbation. We have two girls, and we have ejaculation, of course, but oral, mostly from girl to guy in this film, but a lot of interesting situations. There's a really interesting scene in a bathroom stall where there's a hole in the other bathroom stall and a girl is looking while she is touching herself on the toilet. But the interesting thing is the surreal quality that her tongue takes as she looks through the hole and then kind of almost mimics her own mental fantasy using her tongue in the hole of the bathroom stall while she's watching other people having sex, but nobody can see her. So why is her tongue in that hole? I mean, there's just like some crazy stuff like that. And just some really great scenes in here. Obviously, if you like the whole schoolgirl thing and with the teachers and things like that, you're gonna love this movie. And like I said before, this is definitely a topic that has been utilized before in the sexploitation, teen sex comedy type genre. You even look at like films like Cheerleaders and such, or even the film that I reviewed, Six Swedes Behind Bars, otherwise known as Ball Game, in a longer cut. And you know, the girls are using their sexuality to get what they want. In this case, it would be passing their exams. But there's a very interesting scene at the end of the film where a teacher neglects their sexual advances because it's time to graduate. But what you don't realize is that there's a surprise behind his door, and he has a secret himself. There is a very surreal sex scene in this film. As they're trying to be quiet in a room of sleeping girls. And right when you might think to yourself, this is, probably nearing the end of the film, there's probably going to be this massive orgy scene, blah, 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 nothing of the sort. And it takes on a dreamy, surreal-like quality while people are sleeping in the room and two people are having sex. And also their particular sex really takes on another light as their type of sexual relationship develops throughout the film and finally gets to that apex. But they have to be quiet. They have to be quiet in the room. So very, very interesting type sex scenes in here, and lots of unbridled sexuality, and everybody's great looking, and there's definitely a very strong sexual vibe with the characters and the sexual situations, and it's just great. It works awesome. It's attractive. It's great. There's some really wild angles, in particular this one scene where the camera is kind of underneath the girl and she's wearing this awesome 80s makeup and has kind of like that bleach blonde hair, and it's like kind of hanging, and she's like looking at the camera in a way. It just almost looks like it could be like from Madonna's video Burning Up from the 80s. And just some really cool angles in here with the sex scenes. Typically X-rated movies will have some wild angles and such, but this film did some really interesting things. It was being simple, but then at times it had some wild angles. So here it is, folks, 1988's Loose Times at Ridley High, put out by VCX DVD here. I actually... this could be, these films are not easy to get. And this particular one I got is from AdultDVDEmpire.com. So these are not easy to get at all. And these are the real lost films today. Sexploitation in general, as I've said before, are the real lost films. So here we go, folks. The X-rated film from 1988, Loose Times at Ridley High. Thank you so much for watching the 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page, where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more, like Loose Times at Ridley High from 1988. Thank you so much, folks, and have a good night.